Captain Mara Voss stared out the viewport of the ISS Frontier as it orbited the terraformed moon of Triton. She watched as transport ships carried settlers and supplies down to the burgeoning domed colony below. Triton represented humanity's first outpost in the outer solar system, a foothold for further expansion. But Mara couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. She turned as the door to the observation deck slid open. Her first officer, LT, Alex Brennan, stepped through. "Captain, you're needed on the bridge. We're receiving a Priority 1 transmission from Earth. I'll be right there." Mara took a final glance at Triton, then followed Alex off the deck. As they made their way through the Frontier's gleaming corridors, a sense of disquiet gnawed at her. Arriving on the bridge, Mara took her seat in the command chair. Put the transmission on screen. The face of Admiral Kira Nakamura appeared, lines of concern etched on her features. "Captain Voss, we have a situation. Approximately 1 hour ago, a research station in the Kuiper Belt went dark. Their final transmission was ... disturbing." Mara leaned forward. "What did it say?" "Just 2 words, quantum incursion. Since then, long-range sensors have detected an unidentified mass heading in system at high velocity. We need you to intercept and investigate." "Understood, Admiral. We'll check it out." The screen went blank and Mara turned to her crew. "Prep the ship for departure and plot an intercept course. I want eyes on this thing ASAP." As the crew rushed to carry out her orders, Mara felt a shiver run down her spine. Quantum incursion. The words echoed ominously in her mind. The Frontier dropped out of sublight drive on the outskirts of the solar system. Mara peered through the viewport at the shimmering, iridescent anomaly stretching before them, like a tear in the fabric of space. Sensor readings scrolled across the screens. "What am I looking at?" Mara asked. "LT." Brennan examined the data. "Spectrographic analysis doesn't match anything in our database, but these quantum waveform signatures ... I've never seen anything like it. It's almost as if..." A bright flash erupted from the anomaly, rocking the ship. Alarms blared as the bridge plunged into darkness. "Report," Mara barked. "Some kind of energy discharge," Alex called out. "Shields holding." The lights flickered back on. Mara stared at the anomaly, now pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Ensign Sorensen spoke up from OPS. "Captain, new contact emerging from the anomaly. On screen." A sleek, obsidian-hulled ship slid into view, bristling with unfamiliar weaponry. It dwarfed the Frontier in size. "Hail them," ordered Mara. "No response," replied Sorensen. Mara watched tensely as the alien ship faced off against the Frontier in a silent standoff amid the stars. She had a sinking feeling this first contact was not going to be friendly. The bridge fell silent. The seconds ticked by, thick with tension. Then proximity alarms shattered the quiet. "Missiles incoming," shouted Alex. "Evasive maneuvers. Deploy countermeasures." The Frontier veered hard to port as a salvo of missiles shot past, barely missing the hull. Mara gripped her chair arms as the ship shuddered from the near impact. "Return fire. Full spread." The Frontier's cannons unloaded on the enemy ship. The shots impacted against its shields in blinding flares. Mara watched the tactical display, eyes widening as more readings poured in. "Those shields ... some kind of quantum technology we've never seen." Another volley of missiles streaked towards the Frontier. This time they found their mark. The ship lurched violently as explosions tore through the hull. Damage alerts shrieked from every console. "Shields down to 20%, yelled Alex over the cacophony. "Weapons offline." Mara punched the fleet-wide comm. "This is the Frontier. We are under attack by an unknown aggressor, requesting immediate assistance." An ominous boom resonated through the ship. Then main power cut out, plunging the bridge into darkness again. Crimson emergency lights clicked on, bathing everything in a hellish glow. Sorensen paled as she looked at her screen. "Captain ... the enemy ship. It's gone." "What do you mean gone?" Mara snapped. "Sensors show no sign of it. It's like it vanished." A chill ran through Mara. What were they dealing with? She opened her mouth to order sensor sweeps, but the words died in her throat as a brilliantly blinding light flooded through the viewports. Mara threw a hand up to shield her eyes. As the light dimmed, she lowered it and froze in shock. Outside the ship, surrounding them on all sides, hung a seething maelstrom of kaleidoscopic color and radiance. Ribbons of light danced and swirled in chaotic patterns amid shadowy, half-glimpsed forms. "Status," Mara shouted. "Where the hell are we?" Stunned silence answered her. Alex checked his readings and looked up at her, face ashen with disbelief. "Captain ... According to navigational data, we're no longer in normal spacetime? These quantum readings are off the scale." I think he swallowed. "I think we're inside the anomaly." Mara paced the bridge, mind racing. It had been 2 hours since the alien ship vanished and the Frontier became trapped in this bizarre realm. Attempts to fly out had proven fruitless, no matter which direction they went. The shimmering veil of the anomaly remained constant in all directions. Comms were down. Sensors erratic. They were flying blind with no idea what to do next. Mara ran a hand through her hair in frustration and turned to LT. "Brennan." "Speculation." Alex shook his head. "We're in uncharted territory here, Captain. This anomaly, the ships that emerged from IT... It's all beyond our understanding of physics. We have to face the possibility that this isn't just an incursion. It may be an invasion." A grim silence descended on the bridge. The thought hung unspoken in the air. An invasion from where? Mara gazed out at the writhing miasma. Somewhere beyond that veil lay home. Earth, the colonies, billions of lives unaware of the oncoming storm. She drew in a steadying breath. "Here's what we're going to do. We keep trying to find a way out of here. But we also prepare for the worst. If this is an invasion, we need intelligence. I want continuous sensor sweeps, data analysis, anything that might give us an edge. We have to find a way to warn Earth." Determined nods answered her. The crew set to work with grim resolve, the fate of humanity suddenly resting on their shoulders. Mara returned to the command chair, a leaden weight in her stomach. They were the first line of defense, a thin barrier standing between their world and the unknown. She just prayed it would be enough. Days turned to weeks with no escape from the anomaly. The crew struggled to maintain hope as they carried out their duties with dwindling reserves. Watches blurred together beneath the eternal shimmering light. Captain Sorensen's shout cut through the bleak routine. "I'm picking up new quantum readings. Massive ones, just like before that alien ship appeared." Mara shot to her feet. Battle stations. Charge weapons and ray shields. Alex joined her at the tactical display, analyzing the data. He frowned. "These readings... they're different. Erratic." Almost like his eyes widened. Like a quantum rift is opening inside the anomaly. As he spoke, the kaleidoscopic displays outside the viewports began to churn with increased violence. An alarm blared. "Energy surge," yelled Sorensen. "Brace for impact." A blinding flash seared Mara's vision. The ship jolted hard, hurling her to the deck. Disoriented, ears ringing, she hauled herself up on the sparking ruin of a console and stared slack-jawed out the viewport. The frothing maelstrom of the anomaly had vanished. In its place hung an inky expanse strewn with unfamiliar stars, and silhouetted against this vista floated an immense nightmare structure. It was less a ship than a twisted metropolis sculpted from obsidian metal, bristling with jagged spires and pulsing with eldritch light. Mara felt her sanity waver merely glimpsing it. What ... What is that?" she whispered hoarsely. Sorensen worked frantically at her station, eyes wide with disbelief and horror as esoteric readings tumbled across her screen. "Captain," she looked up, face bloodless. "I'm detecting thousands of ships. They're emerging from that structure and heading towards the rift, towards Earth." Cold despair gripped Mara. After weeks of fruitless struggle, the true face of the enemy had been revealed ... and they had no hope of stopping it. Earth would fall beneath this onslaught from beyond the stars, and she was powerless to prevent it. She slumped back in her chair, numb. How could they fight this? What chance did humanity have against such an incomprehensible foe? Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, with a Herculean effort, Mara pushed back against the defeated hopelessness threatening to drown her. No, they didn't come this far to surrender. While her crew still drew breath, while the Frontier still flew, they would fight. They would find a way. Somehow, she rose to her feet, steel entwined with purpose. Prepare a warning buoy with all our logs and telemetry. Launch it back through the rift. If we don't make it, Earth has to know what's coming. Alex nodded grimly and rushed to carry out the order. Mara turned to Sorensen. Catalog every scrap of data you can pull from that structure. I need to know what it can do and how to hurt it. Aye, Captain. Mara faced the looming horror outside the viewport. The Frontier may be one ship, but today it stands for all Earth. We will not go quietly, her gaze hardened with resolve. Take us in, full combat spread. For Earth, the Frontier, bold and defiant, hurled itself at the mass ships with weapons blazing in a desperate charge. Mara watched the tide of enemies rush to meet them. If this was to be humanity's last stand, they would make it one worthy of remembrance. On the surface of Triton, the colonists watched the skies with rising dread. Ominous lights flared and danced amid the stars' silent echoes of a battle raging at the threshold of the solar system. A battle that would determine the fate of their species. In the days that followed, fragments of wreckage rained down, scorched remnants of destroyed ships from both sides. The colonists listened with mounting horror to the garbled warnings coming through their comms from the inner system. Pleas for aid from beleaguered ships, desperate evacuations from overrun outposts, dire reports of enemy forces sweeping in system, shrugging off all resistance as they advanced inexorably on Earth. Their worst fears were realized when a new star blossomed in the heavens with a searing brilliance that seared their eyes and etched stark shadows across the lunar landscape. A star where Earth had once hung. As that terrible light faded, and a wave of dread and grief swept the colony, they looked to the stars with the grim knowledge that a line had been crossed. There could be no return to what was, only a battle for what might yet be. With heavy hearts and determined resolve, the colonists of Triton hunkered down to prepare for the dark days ahead. The first of many lost outposts fated to bear the flickering flame of human defiance against the night. The war for the solar system had begun. In the charred, drifting wreckage of the Frontier, Mara dragged herself to the backup transmitter, broken body screaming with every movement. Through the pain, one thought pulsed like a beacon: they had to know. She didn't know how many of the enemy ships they'd taken down with them. Didn't know if the warning buoy had made it. But she had to try. With fumbling, bloody fingers, she punched in the code for a wideband SOS and hit transmit. Drawing in a serrated breath, she forced out the words. This is Captain Mara Voss of the ISS Frontier. To any survivors, beware ... quantum incursion imminent. Earth has fallen. Enemy is not invulnerable. Fight on. Resist. Survive. Frontier out. As the message beamed out amid the stars, Mara slumped back, strength and life ebbing. A strange peace descended over her as her fading gaze drifted to the viewport. The enemy ships streamed past in a tide of looming black, headed in system. Headed for the colonies. For humanity's last bastions. But now, those colonies knew what was coming. They had a chance. The Frontier had held the line just long enough. It was up to them now. Mara let her eyes fall shut, filled with a weary pride in her ship and crew. They had done all they could. Given their lives to carry a vital spark of hope and defiance to the far-flung remnants of their species. Her lips curved in a faint smile as the last of her strength drained away. Perhaps someday, the survivors would remember the Frontier and the battle they fought here. The first shot in the long war to come. And with that final thought, Captain Mara Voss embraced the dark. A heavy pall hung over the Triton colony. The once vibrant settlement now felt like a sepulchre, shrouded in grief and shock in the wake of Earth's fall. Stunned colonists gathered in huddled knots, speaking in hushed murmurs as they grappled with the unthinkable reality that humanity's homeworld was gone. In the colony's command center, a tense meeting was unfolding. Governor Alara Stavros stood before a room packed with ashen-faced officials, struggling to project a veneer of calm authority. Just days ago, her biggest concerns had been resource allocation and expansion planning. Now, the survival of the colony, perhaps the survival of the entire human race, rested in her hands. She drew in a steadying breath. We all heard Captain Voss's message. Earth has fallen to an unknown aggressor. This quantum incursion, from the reports coming in, it's clear this enemy is beyond anything we've ever faced. Which means our course of action is clear. Alara surveyed the room, making eye contact with each person, letting them see her resolve. We have to assume we're on our own now. Earth can no longer help us. Our first priority must be ensuring the survival of this colony and its people. To that end, I am declaring a state of emergency and putting all resources towards preparing our defenses. We must be ready for the enemy's arrival. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, tinged with fear. These were not soldiers. They were engineers, scientists, civilians. But they were all that stood between the enemy and the last light of human civilization guttering out. Alara pressed on. We don't know how much time we have before they reach us, so we start now. I want all factories converted to producing defensive armaments and shield generators. All construction efforts focused on reinforcing our dome and critical infrastructure. And I want our best minds working around the clock to analyze the data from the frontier, looking for any weakness or vulnerability in the enemy's technology that we can exploit. She paused, letting the gravity of their situation sink in. Make no mistake, this will be the fight of our lives. But we are the last hope for our species. For all the generations that might yet come after us, we will stand, we will fight, and we will endure whatever comes. For Earth, for humanity. As the meeting adjourned and grim-faced colonists dispersed to begin preparations, Alara sank into a chair, suddenly feeling the weight of the colony pressing down on her. So many lives depending on her to lead them through this crisis. She just prayed she would be up to the task. Far out in the void, amid the whirling, kaleidoscopic tides of the quantum anomaly, a black ship drifted, bulbous and nightmarish. It hung in space like a cancerous growth, pulsing with eldritch energies. Within the ship, a chittering, insectoid creature scurried through dripping, biomechanical corridors. It burst into a vast chamber where a pulsing ovoid of sickly light hovered. Other creatures milled about, but this one paid them no mind as it approached the ovoid and bowed its head. Speak an echoing, multi-layered voice slithered from the ovoid. Our forces have taken the Earth, Master. The infection spreads, and the humans, scattered and burning. As you commanded, a long pause followed. Then I sense pockets of resistance, echoes of defiance flickering at the frayed edges of our web. The insectoid quailed, mandibles quivering. Forgive me, Master. We will redouble our efforts. The humans will be exterminated, I swear it. See that they are looming menace dripped from the ovoid's words. The seeds we have sown across the millennia now bear poisoned fruit. This galaxy will fall to the quantum swarm, as have all the others. These humans are but chaff before our hunger. Chaff to be scythed and devoured. The Master's voice sank to a guttural rasp pulsing with eons of insatiable hunger. Let this Earth serve as an example to any who would resist. There can be no victory against the swarm. Only the void awaits. On Triton, a klaxon blared. In the command center, Governor Stavros whirled from a console to face a wide-eyed comm officer. The report. Governor, we're receiving an emergency QEC transmission from the European outpost. They say ... They say unknown ships are approaching the moon at high speed. Scans show quantum signatures matching the Frontier's data on the enemy. Alara felt a cold knot of dread settle in her stomach. This was it. The vanguard of the enemy assault, arriving far sooner than they'd anticipated. Humanity's first clash with the extra-dimensional horror that had all but wiped them out. Alert all defense forces, she ordered. I want every ship and orbital weapon we have locked on to those signatures, and keep the evac shuttles on standby. The command center erupted into orderly chaos as the orders went out. Alara watched the tactical display, tracking the incoming red dots with a growing sense of unreality. To think that just months ago, the notion of an alien invasion had been the stuff of fiction, and now it would be the defining moment of her life. Of all their lives, the first shots came minutes later, lancing up from the moon's surface batteries in searing beams. Torpedoes followed close behind, hurled from concealed launchers to streak towards the enemy formation. Alara held her breath as the initial salvo reached its target, and burst harmlessly against dancing, iridescent shields that rippled and refracted like oil slicks. No effect, the weapons officer shouted. Our weapons can't penetrate their defenses. Alara tightened her grip on the console, fighting down the despair rising in her throat. She had committed everything to this defense, thrown every resource they had into standing against the oncoming storm, and now it seemed it had been for naught. The enemy vessels glided on unconcerned, shrugging off everything the human defenses threw at them. Looming closer, their nightmarish forms becoming clearer on the displays. Alara drew in a steadying breath. If this was to be the colony's end, she would face it on her feet, not cowering. Prepare to transmit all data to the remaining outposts, she ordered, voice heavy with resignation. Let them learn from our loss here. The comm officer nodded solemnly and bent to her task. But before she could begin the transmission, a new reading surged across the displays, burning with impossible intensity. "New contact," the sensor tech cried. "Bearing 037 Mark II, range 50,000 kilometers. It just appeared out of nowhere." On screen, Alara snapped. The main viewer flickered, and a collective gasp ran through the command center. Hanging against the starfield, framed by the seething tide of enemy ships, was a vessel unlike any Alara had seen. Angular and predatory, it was a sleek dagger to the invader's cancerous nightmare, all elegant lines and thrumming power. And it was not alone. More ships blinked into existence behind it, dropping out of some exotic form of FTL in perfect formation. Dozens, hundreds, an armada of gleaming warships that made humanity's defenses look like toys. Alara stared in shock, hardly daring to hope. But then an urgent hail cut through the din of the command center. Incoming transmission from the lead ship put it through. The main screen wavered and resolved into an image that drew astonished murmurs. The bridge on the view screen was a marvel of advanced technology, all sleek consoles and hollow projections. But it was the figure in the command chair that commanded attention. She was human, and yet not. Her features were too perfect, her bearing too poised. She regarded the camera with eyes that swirled with galaxies and an ageless wisdom far beyond her youthful appearance. When she spoke, her voice rang with quiet power that seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of space-time. "People of Triton, I am Admiral Cassandra Dumont of the Terran Ascendancy. We come to aid you in your hour of greatest need. You are not alone." Alara felt a wild surge of emotions: relief, confusion, awe. 1,000 questions burned on her lips. But there would be time for answers later. "Admiral Dumont, your arrival is most welcome. We had thought ourselves alone against this enemy, something ancient," and knowing flickered in Dumont's cosmic eyes. "You were never alone, Governor. Humanity's fire has not been so easily extinguished. We have been fighting the swarm since the first incursion, in a war beyond your ken." She gestured to her bridge crewmen and women possessed of the same otherworldly mien, who bent to their tasks with fluid precision. "The battle to come will be but one saga in a war that has raged across eons, fought in the quantum realms between universes, but know that you do not face this trial alone. Humanity has ever endured, has risen to heights undreamed of in the face of oblivion, and we shall not falter now." Dumont rose from her chair, tall and resplendent in a uniform of shimmering nanoweave. She raised a hand, and with a simple gesture, the Ascendancy fleet responded. With breathtaking speed and precision, the assemblage of advanced ships peeled off into battle formation and streaked towards the oncoming swarm vessels. Weapons powered by the fundamental forces of creation thrummed to life. Alara watched, scarcely breathing, as the two fleets converged. Swarm and Ascendancy, Nightmare and Panparagon, dark and light. Where before the swarm had shrugged off weapons fire like rain, now their shields crackled and strained beneath the relentless onslaught of the Ascendancy ships. Quantum lances seared through hulls, singularity warheads collapsed the very space-time continuum around their targets. The enemy ships, the sensor tech shook her head in disbelief. Their defenses are failing. The Ascendancy is carving through them. As quickly as it had begun, the battle was over. The swarm fleet lay in ruins, charred hulks tumbling lifeless against the stars. The Ascendancy ships hung victorious, gleaming and unscarred. Alara felt a weight lift from her shoulders as she slumped back in her seat. Tears glinted at the corners of her eyes. It was over. Against all odds, they had prevailed. Triton and perhaps humanity itself would see another dawn. Admiral Dumont's serene visage reappeared on the view screen. Gone was the fierce warrior goddess in her place, a beacon of wisdom and comfort. "Be at peace, Governor. Triton is safe for now. But this victory is but a single step on a long and perilous road." Her eyes seemed to pierce the very depths of Alara's soul. Humanity's trial has only begun. The swarm will not relent, cannot relent. They are but the harbinger of an ancient hunger that seeks to unmake all of creation. A frisson of dread ran down Alara's spine at the Admiral's words. The implications were staggering. "Then what can we do?" Alara asked hoarsely. "How can we stand against such a tide?" Dumont smiled enigmatically. "By becoming more than what we are. By reaching beyond the limits of flesh and blood and embracing our potential, the potential glimpsed in the ascendancy. She spread her hands in a gesture encompassing Triton, Earth, the very galaxy. A great and terrible saga is unfolding, one in which all of humankind must play a part if we are to endure. The ascendancy will guide you, teach you, help you claw back what was lost and ascend to stand as guardians against the long dark. Dumont's gaze bored into Alara. The path will not be easy. It will demand much, and the price of failure is extinction. But I have faith in the indomitable spirit of our species. Together, we will see the dawn of a new age. Or else burn in the twilight of the old. The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Alara stared at the blank screen, mind whirling with the implications of what she had heard. Everything had changed. The universe had expanded into a far stranger, more terrifying place than she could have ever imagined. Horrors and wonders in equal measure, far beyond human ken. But amid the fear and awe, a flicker of resolve took root in her heart. Whatever trials lay ahead, whatever sacrifices were demanded, humanity would face them. They would rise to meet this challenge as they had so many before, and they would endure. They had to, for there could be no surrender, no retreat, only the long, hard road to ascension. Or oblivion. The fate of the galaxy would be written in the choices they made in the days to come, and Alara silently vowed that they would not be found wanting. The quantum war had only just begun, and the Terran ascendancy would light the way to victory. Or to the very end of everything, to be continued.